She said, stop, stop, stop. Get out your heart.
It's so good.
That's
like,
my quiz.
why is it so good?
I don't know. It's making me upset, too, with how good it is.
It's so good.
Every time we hit play, we have to just listen.
News, no bad. Like, it's
too much.
Somehow he takes a track that's already good, and he just elevates it. Luxury, I gotta say, one of the biggest songs of the year so far is Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA.
If this world were mine.
Hey, Roman numeral 7, babe, drop it like it's hot. If this world was mine, I'd take your dreams and make them multiply.
But that's not what we're talking about today.
I was going to say, before you get too excited.
Yes. On today's episode, we're going to talk about who that Luther is.
That's right, Diallo, because the Luther who sampled Voice is also the name of the longest running #1 single for a duet of all time.
Yes.
Was himself a huge star in the 80s and 90s as a solo artist.
Wow. And what's interesting is he got his start in a similar way, not as a lead artist, but as a background singer. Today, we're going to talk about a song that helped bring him to the forefront. We're talking about one song, and that song is Searchin' by Change, featuring Luther Vandross.
Stop, 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 stop. Get out your heart.
We're going to have some fun today. I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ, Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist Luxury, aka the guy who whispers.
Interpolation.
And this is one song.
The show where we break down the stems and stories behind iconic songs across genres and tell you why they deserve one more listen.
You will hear these songs like you've never heard them before. And if you want to watch one song, you can watch this full episode on YouTube and Spotify. And while you're there, please like and subscribe.
So Diallo, where were you when you first heard the song Searchin'?
Funnily enough, it was, this is the first CD I ever owned.
Really?
My sister bought my mom and dad a CD player. It was like in a big wooden cabinet.
Okay.
It had a CD player. And you could see the CD spin. And the one CD she bought us was the Best of Luther. It was a double CD.
Yeah.
And I remember taking it out, and I didn't, I knew Luther, but I didn't know Luther.
You knew the name?
Yeah, of course. I put in CD 1. I just wanted to see that thing spin. But of course, this was the first song on the Best of Luther CD.
Which tells you a lot.
Yes.
It's an important song.
It's an important song. And by the way, to this day, when Luther comes up in conversations, I forget sometimes that I know almost every Luther song by heart. And yeah, to this day, like these songs like evoke a weird emotion out of me because his voice, and we're going to talk a lot about it, his voice is so emotional.
It's so special. It's so rich.
It's so special.
Yeah.
My kid walks into the room last night. And he's like, hey, check out this guy who can sing. And I was just like, listening to this. I was like, he's all right. But like, I need you to watch that Luther documentary because I need to know what real singing sounds like.
Every syllable that he sings, every note has real, authentic emotion that you can't put your finger on. You can sort of, on this show, we deconstruct music. We talk about the artists. We talk about what's being done musically.
We demystify it.
There is a level of, you cannot,
Yes.
I don't know why. It
It's
just
magic.
touches you because it's magic. It's just emotional magic.
And such a distinct sound.
Yeah.
And he just has a way of like, he can take the most basic song and make it and Lutherize it, so to speak. And all of a sudden you're like crying. You're just like, I can't take it. The Sesame Street song, I can't take it.
His voice is a direct link to who he is, to his emotional core.
Yes.
And you really feel his life story and his experiences.
And when he starts
evoked.
writing music, you realize, oh my gosh, this man has a story to tell.
Right.
And we have a story to tell about Luther today. What about you, Luxury? What was the first time you heard the song Searching?
So what's interesting about this band, it's changed. When I first started as a blogger, right? When I had my disco workout blog.
We're not judging you.
We're not, hey, listen, blog is not my favorite word, but blogging was an activity I did full with my chest back in the days of Bloghouse. We talked about it on a few episodes. Yeahs, a few more. And it was a blog focused on deeper cut disco tracks like Italo disco and disco and even some post-punk. And with my partners on the blog, Bear Baby and Jonatron, we made a lot of discovers. We would turn each other on to stuff. And I think Bear Baby, Sarah, who, by the way, if you're out there, Sarah Dougherty, I've been looking for you for years. Hit me up. You're hard to find on Google. You're not on any of the social media. I think she brought me this song. She brought me Change. And it was everything I love about, like, in that moment as a disco DJ and remixer and vlogger especially. The musical bed is like all the sounds and rhythms that I love.
Yeah.
It's such a warm bed of bass and the drums and the timbales and everything. And of course, Luther's voice on top. So I was instantly smitten with this artist, with Change featuring Luther Vandross, which is what we're talking about today.
I will say, when we started this podcast, there were certain voices that we knew we had to give a spotlight to.
Absolutely. And this is sort of a double episode within an episode, because it is a Luther Vandross and a Change episode.
Yes.
These are two entities that are different, that the marriage of the two of them is what makes the song so incredible.
So as we mentioned at the top, we wanted to cover today's song because it's an important touch point in Luther's transition from being a background singer to a lead vocalist. And we also want to take the time to give the man his flowers while his name is still in the zeitgeist by way of that Kendrick Lamar and SZA track, Luther, which samples his rendition of If This World Were Mine.
If this world were mine, I would place at your feet all that I own.
He imbues every
my God.
word
Yeah.
with meaning.
He got my attention immediately. The second the breath turned into sound, like when he just opens his mouth, it's so immediate. Your focus is directly on, you're
You
stop
can't-
dead in your tracks. You have to listen.
You can't be distracted.
You cannot be
when
distracted.
Luther sings. By the way, that's a cover. It was originally sung by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell.
If this world were mine, I would place at your feet.
Yeah, fine, perfectly fine.
Listen, Marvin Gaye.
fine.
No one is throwing shade at Marvin Gaye on this show, but
No,
but
but
Luther
think about
built
what it
on what
takes.
Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell
Think about what it takes
established.
to
Right.
make Marvin
Mhm.
Gaye sound like Pat Boone.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, think of the talent that
man.
it takes.
That wasn't
to
my.
make him-
That's not my take, but I hear where you're going.
But you know what I mean?
I know what you mean by that. Yeah. Marvin Gaye, Tammy Terrell. When that song was out, you were transfixed. But when Luther and Cheryl Lynn's version comes out, that is the definitive version. That's the definitive version.
But that's very Luther, because so many of his songs, I found out while preparing for this episode,
Mhm.
are covers. And I'm like Dionne Warwick. She was like, when he covered one of her songs, A House Is Not a Home,
Yeah, and
she was
she's-
like, oh, you just did the definitive version
Brings
of
her
my song.
to tears. It's
Yes.
incredible footage watching her watch him.
Two of us, we are far apart, and one of us.
So let's talk about how Luther Vandross came to be in Change, what his career was leading up to this moment where he does the song Searching.
Yeah, listen, at this point in the mid to late 70s, Luther is killing it as a background singer. To hear one person tell it, he was the #1 background singer in New York. He was singing, he was arranging, he's doing backing vocals for albums by artists like Chaka Khan, Roberta Flack, Evelyn Champagne King, and some guy named David Bowie. Let's watch a clip of Luther performing Young Americans live with David Bowie.
I heard the news today, oh boy. I got it, sweet. You got the beat.
I heard the news today.
That is the Beatles.
Interpolation, right?
That is
absolutely.
it's a reference. It's uncredited, but they didn't need to.
Yeah, listen.
From musician to musician, that's like back in the day. It's like you'd be a jerk if you were
Linda's
like, hey,
still alive
pay
at this
me.
point.
Yeah.
It's really whack if he's like, hey, I went with you on Fame, but I really need some money for
I need my
that
0.5%.
reference to a day in the
Yeah,
life.
Exactly.
And it's really fun seeing like a young Luther back there just singing. I gotta give credit to Boy. He saw it right away. He was like, this guy needs to like shuffle up to the front.
yeah, there's something special about this.
Yeah,
guy.
absolutely. And also didn't realize how tall Luther was, because we all know David Bowie is a pretty tall dude, and Luther's taller than him. Luther's
never noticed
apparently
that either.
6'3",
Jesus.
which, you just don't even, I never
hadn't
thought of
noticed,
Luther as
yeah.
being that tall, but like, Luther's tall
It
dude.
may have contributed to some of the power. Certainly, the frame plays into what the sound is.
Well, they talk about that in this wonderful documentary, Never Too Much,
Such
which
a
we
good
should
documentary.
absolutely
Highly
give
recommend.
props to. You see Luther like on Sesame Street singing, but like, as they say in the documentary, he's like a little bit chubby, and he's dark skinned at a time when like that was frowned upon by the entertainment industry. So like the idea that he would be the lead.
Yeah, there were some limitations, in other words, that were put on him just by the marketing departments of record labels,
Yes.
who were afraid that it would turn people off, which it, of course, does not.
Even as a singer in this group that sings at the Apollo, Listen Up Brother, they're just like, no, he wasn't the lead because they felt like that wasn't marketable at the
Yeah.
time. You either had to be skinny
Yeah.
or you had to be, something else. And like he was neither of these things. And yet, the voice of an angel.
One of the things we love about Bowie is when he saw talent, he recognized talent, he brought them into the fold and gave them credit where it was due. For example, he heard one day, according to the documentary that we mentioned, he hears Luther singing a song, one of his own songs called Funky Music.
Every time I hear funky music,
Woo!
I just can't stand still.
It's so good. I love how Luther finds like those notes
Yeah.
that just complement what's going on musically so perfectly.
By the way, I'd never noticed the album cover for Luther. This 1976 album cover for Luther, it looks like a heavy metal like logo. It's so cool. It's so like
yes,
hard.
agree.
It goes really hard. Yeah, I mean his face isn't on the cover, but this like heavy metal. I would have assumed that this would go right in the stacks next to Zeppelin or whatever.
Absolutely.
Next
For those
to
watching
like
on
Judas
YouTube,
Priest.
we've got the picture up. You got to see it.
It looks like Judas Priest or something.
Totally.
So when Bowie hears this, he loves the tune, and they work together to turn it into a David Bowie song. They work kind of sideways from it and create a new song, but Luther is giving credit, and the song is called Fascination.
Great song.
Every time I feel
There it is.
fascination, I just can't stand still.
It's funny because I'm thinking about how in this period, this is, by the way, these are two of my favorite Bowie records, in
Yeah.
between the Ziggy years and the Berlin years, which are also great.
Totally.
Like he has so many
Like Station to
periods.
Station.
Station to Station.
Yeah.
It might be my favorite Bowie record, and that's the
Really?
one that comes after this one.
It's a great album.
But he's obviously also kind of in a period of like chaos in his personal life and with his cocaine intake and not eating a lot of food. The Thin White Duke comes out of him, not being a terribly
Very
healthy
skinny
person.
man.
And it's interesting because I'm thinking about his creative process. He did a similar thing. The song Fame, famously, comes out of a similar writing sideways from a tune. He was covering a Flair's song called Foot Stompin'.
Body choking through. Foot stomping, 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 foot. Something new, everybody's choking through. Foot stomping, foot stomping, foot stomping, foot stomping, foot stomping.
And they were doing a similar thing where they were covering it and they decided, hey, wait a second, let's make some changes and just make
Let's
a new
go
song.
sideways.
And that's where the song Fame comes from.
Fame, what you get is no tomorrow. Fame, what you need, you have to borrow.
So it's interesting because clearly he was sort of looking at this songwriting method of like absorbing something about another song, like maybe its rhythms, maybe
Yeah.
a few of its chord changes, maybe a word or a melody or two. And in this case, he did that and of course credited Luther,
And
which
I
is
love
the right thing
that
to
he's
do.
like being so collaborative
Yeah.
because like, to hear Bowie tell it in footage from that period, he's like hearing what Luther's bringing to songs like Young Americans.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, that's it.
Right, because it's not just, hey, I've got a part for you, sing at the end.
Yes.
Luther is crafting, he's making
Luther's
choices
talking
about
to his collaborator,
note
Robin
placement,
Clark. Yeah.
about syncopation,
Yes.
about what the harmony stack should be. Luther is really owning that process of making the background vocals not just a sort of afterthought, but a really crucial part of the song.
And this working with Bowie is, I would imagine, a huge break for Luther.
Absolutely. It sets the stage for the next level of his career. He says that his work with Bowie is when his career really started, because up until that point, he was living with his mom. And then Bowie took him on the road and his life changed.
So Luther's working with everybody. Again, he's like the go-to background singer in New York. And I did not know this until we were working on the episode. He's on all those epic Chic albums.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense
Yeah.
now.
When you hear
go
it,
back. Yeah, now you
hear
can go
it.
back and
You
hear
hear
it.
him.
Through 1978, he sang background on multiple hit records with Chic, including Le Freak, I Want Your Love, and of course, Everybody Dance,
Ooh.
which has a doo-doo-doo, which is very Luther.
Yeah.
That's a very Luther thing to do. Doo-doo-doo. Considering all of the cosigns that Luther had, you would have thought that his own, singing group would have performed well on the charts. That's not the case.
Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. They put out a couple records.
Yeah.
The Luther with that great metal
Luther!
album, right? The heavy metal album. Luther didn't do that well.
I think that was misbranding.
And the second album called This Close to You, but both of them struggled to chart.
Yes, but little did he know that his work would travel all the way to Italy and push him to a whole new level of fame. Luxury, what can you tell us about the group Change?
Okay, well, that brings us to the second part of our 2 parts. That's one episode. What would you call that? The double episode that's this way? I feel like there's a horizontal visual.
We're doing this episode sideways.
We're doing this episode sideways. It's one episode with 2 bands in it. That's what it is. Because on the musical underbelly of Luther's voice is a band, so to speak, comprised of a bunch of musicians, not all of whose names we know, because there's an anonymous disco era phenomenon going on. If we can now take you to Italy, where we're in late 70s Bologna, and a couple of gentlemen meet and they create this entity that's going to make the underbelly, the musical bed of a whole bunch of hit records, very few of which have any names that we now know because not a lot of credits were put on these records. But we've pieced together with our crack research team, we've done our homework, and I think we can tell you a little bit about how this music was made and who made it. I apologize in advance, I may mangle some of these Italian names, but I believe Mauro Malavasi is his name. This was a gentleman who was studying classical music in late 70s Bologna, Italy, learning production, learning arranging, and a friend came to him and said, hey, I want to do a cover of the Spencer Davis Group's I'm a Man. So he meets another person named Jacques Fred Petrus. And again, I hope I'm saying these words right, who's a Guadeloupean-born record store owner in Milan. It's called Goody Music. That name's going to factor into this story. And he had as a record store owner who catered to DJs and a DJ himself, he had his ear to what was being played and what people wanted. And at the time, to get records from America, they were all imports. They didn't have licensing deals. So he didn't have enough content. He needed more material. So he ends up meeting Mauro, and he brings this idea to him. He's like, I need some 20-minute songs. Like we have Casablanca records, the Donna Summer, the Giorgio Moroder stuff, these disco records that are really long. So people want this repetition. They want something they like to continue. And there's just not enough of those long songs happening, extended mixes. So bringing it all together, we have Mauro with this idea that his friend wants to cover I'm a Man, but like a disco version. And then this guy who wants a 20-minute song, he brings in his friend, a bass player called David Romani. And this is the brain trust behind what becomes Goody Music, this record label and production team that's at the core of all of these disco hits, starting with this one. This is 1979. Macho is the name of the artist. It's the 20-minute I'm a Man extended version.
Gotta hear this. I'm a man, yes I am, but I can't help but love you so.
So good.
I hear chest hair. I hear medallions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this song becomes a gay disco anthem.
There you go.
Like, listen, it's called I'm a Man.
Yeah.
The cover has 2 men wearing leather and sunglasses, and the artist is macho. So
Yeah, I love it.
pretty incredible stuff.
Very cool.
This group of musicians, the Goody Music Brain Trust, which again, it's Mauro Malavasi, who's production, arranging, etc., David Romani on bass, and Paolo Giannolio appears to be the 3 main musicians, and then a lot of uncredited artists on drums in particular that we're going to do our best to name in the stems. But the point is, they are cranking out music 24/7. It all sounds amazing. And their production process is interesting because they'll record it in Italy, all the instruments, but then they send it to America to get some of the best and brightest American singers to sing on top of it. So it's this international affair.
Love it.
By the way, it should be said, we love Change and we love Chic, and you can play them back to back, and maybe someone who's not familiar with both artists would not be certain where one ends and one begins.
Yeah.
There's an overlap in not just musically what they sound like, but Luther Vandross is sometimes on both of the songs.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a cross-pollination basically between Italy and America happening in the music. And we were talking before the episode about how part of that plays into this song where we're kind of transitioning from disco into some of the soul.
More traditional
and
R&B.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Which is probably a result of having those singers from the scene we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And I found a quote. So this, the bass player, David, part of the core musical brain trust, these guys are studio rats. They're making tracks all day long. And David Romani says, this song that we're talking about today, Searching, was originally going to be for another band. And but it sounded better for Change. There was some at some point they decided this feels like it's not the Peter Jacques Band, which is another one of their entities, and more probably because of this R&B funk vibe that it had musically before there were even
Change
vocals.
was their vessel to do more traditional R&B.
That's right.
Yeah.
With a disco flair and maybe some of the instrumentation and 4 on the floor, but absolutely, especially with the vocals on top, the R&B vocals takes it to a different place. Just a quick note about studio bands. These were really huge in the disco era.
Yeah.
Sort of genre-based music where a group of musicians could create a lot of content and then decide later what the artist was, or even if the artist mattered. It should be noted that the artist name we're talking about today is really Change, and Luther Vandross was a rare example of his name being added to the credits, but his face is not on the cover.
Right.
The entirety of Change's catalog doesn't have any musicians on the cover. They're all these abstract
That's right.
images. It's a tradition that goes back even further. Look, there was a whole spate of in the late 60s, all these songs that were one-hit wonders, and they were completely not only faceless, but kind of fake bands. They would hire musicians to go on TV and pretend they were a band like Steam, who famously did Na 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 Hey Hey Goodbye. Of course, the Archies, Sugar Sugar.
Oh, honey, honey, you are my candy.
Couldn't convince me that wasn't Archie Andrews and his friends
Jughead,
singing that song. Yeah.
Betty, Veronica. And before that even, the Ohio Express, another non-existent band, did a song called Yummy, Yummy, Yummy. I've got love in
I
my
didn't
tummy.
know Ohio Express didn't exist.
Yummy, 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 I got love in my tummy and I feel like I'm loving you. Love you such a sweet thing, good enough.
This was called bubblegum pop at the time, right? This is where the origin of that term is, where it's just faceless, nameless corporate pop has existed as a concept for quite some time.
Wow.
In 1969, these songs would have been sort of maligned for being brainless pablum for the preteen set.
I like that they decided, you know what, guys? Let's put Ohio in the name of this group.
That'll really
That's
get the kids
really gonna
buying
get
the
the
record.
kids going.
But these are great songs. And so too, our song today, which at the time was one of these anonymous collective of musicians.
Yeah.
No one's on the cover. But something really interesting happens where Luther Vandross, who is the vocalist, unusually for this band, for this time, for this type of music, his name is in the credits. He was able to use his leverage to get not a songwriting credit,
Right.
unfortunately, but he is at least credited. His name is on the title.
So how did these guys end up recruiting Luther?
In fact, it was his work on commercial jingles, which is where he was making his fortune at the time.
Wow.
There's nothing like a roller coaster ride. There's nothing like a view from a mile in the sky. And there's nothing like the flavor of juicy fruit gum.
It's so insane because you can make the case that Tyrese blew up because of his Coca-Cola commercial.
Right.
There's something about commercials in
Yeah.
general
But-
that really put
I
you-
think Coke adds life is what it is. Yeah.
So the jingles put him on their radar.
Right.
And then when they hear his background vocals, they're like, oh, this guy can sing lead,
Yeah.
which is awesome. It's a little bit what happened during the Young Americans.
And even
look,
Roberta Flack, this keeps happening to him.
it keeps happening. And
Yeah.
by the way, I just have to say right now, Luther has a habit of stealing the
Yeah.
show. He steals the show. There's the performance of 98 Degrees, Usher, and Luther when they're singing Man in the Mirror
Yeah.
at an award show.
Oh, right.
He steals the show.
He's never truly a quote unquote background singer in the background. He shines through and people hear it. They bring him up.
But also, think about when Luther steals the show, when it's Stevie, Dion, Gladys Knight, and they're all singing That's What Friends Are For.
Mhm.
He steals the show with like 3 of the other greatest singers of all time. Luther steals the show.
He's your favorite singer's favorite singer.
Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on.
So Luther went on to nail his vocals for Searching and Glow of Love, which was a huge hit.
Love
He
that
does
song.
both songs in one take.
By the way, that's one of my favorite songs of all time. It's also one of Luther's favorite songs of all time. He said in an interview, quote, "The Glow of Love is the most beautiful song I've ever sung in my life."
It's such a great song. Let's hear a little bit of Glow of Love.
And the beauty seems to say it's a pleasure when you treasure all that's new and true and gay. Easy living.
Listen, this is such good music that I'm in tears. I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's got everything I like in music in this song. Now, I've said that line many times on this show for songs that did not sound like that. Because clearly I love music, but this has the warmth.
I just love
the
how
bass
it's
line.
mastered, man.
It sounds so good.
It
The
sounds
production
so
is
good.
so
And like the reverb, like everything sounds classic about it.
Classy even, yeah.
Classy and
classy.
classic.
Yeah.
The song
That piano
is perfection.
does exactly what a piano should
Doo-doo.
do. Yes. That little melodic line there, so
So
subtle.
good. So good.
Ugh.
Well, listen,
Ugh.
we're talking about Luther Vandross. We're going to take a quick break. But when we get back, we're going to hear Luther's isolated vocals in all their glory. You don't want to miss that. Stick around. Welcome back to One Song Luxury. Let's get into the stems.
All right, so this song was recorded, as we mentioned, in 2 different cities, in 2 different countries, 2 different continents. One of which was in Bologna, Italy, at Fontoprint Studios. That's where all the instruments were recorded. The vocals, however, were recorded at Power Station, New York City. As mentioned earlier, we have a lot of deciphering and research and musical archaeology we had to do to get some of the credit information,
Yeah.
and even where the song was recorded, because I found a different interview where somebody said Searching was actually recorded and mixed in New York at Media Sound. We're not exactly sure, but what we do know is that the musical brain trust were those gentlemen we mentioned earlier, Mauro Malavasi on production and I think keyboards, David Romani on bass, and Paolo Gianolio on guitar, and probably not Jacques Petrus. He's given a producer credit, but he's one of those producers. His story ends a little tragically with a gunshot when he had to flee the country because of tax evasion, and then he was murdered in Guadalupe by a Swiss gunman who clashed with him, who had an argument with him earlier that night at a club he owned.
I'm only laughing because I feel like you buried the lead. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know this story was going to take that route. I want to know more about that. I feel like we probably don't know more about that.
Let's stop the episode and start from this.
We'll do a true crime episode on Change at a later time, but please continue.
Right. So we're pretty sure that, and the way the story ends also is that all the musicians I've named later in life talk about how they got kind of screwed over financially by this gentleman. So Jacques Fred Petrus.
Change.
We love the band. We love the musicians. The producer who's given credit may or not have made many contributions to the music. But now we will talk about the people that we know who did.
Wait. Can we find out more about the Change murder?
Listen, according to a Vice article, in 1986, he fled the U.S. because of tax evasion charges.
Okay.
And moved back to Guadalupe, where he's from.
Yeah.
Apparently, he maybe owned or bought an interest in a nightclub there. And the night he was murdered, earlier that night, he had been seen arguing with the person who shot him.
Oh.
So we're not sure exactly what went down
they were
and
arguing
how,
about, sure.
but he was unfortunately murdered
Oh, no.
in 1987.
Bummer. Okay.
Bummer.
Well, let's talk about the music. What's
Yeah.
going on in the stems?
Okay, so what's fun about this song is that it starts with a lot of rhythmic things that are a little bit hard to find the one, and wonderfully so. So I'm going to play for you some of the elements that are syncopating and merging to like start the song with this like triplet kind of shuffle thing we've talked about like on the
Absolutely.
Blondie episode. Here's the hi-hats, and I'm going to add some more elements, and you'll hear how it all comes together. Yeah, that's there. Or is it there?
Wow.
Right? Where's the damn one? And there's one more thing. And it all comes together
I feel like
right
I'm going
now.
insane.
Was the one where you thought it was?
No.
No, it wasn't for me
No,
either.
and by the way, as a DJ, this
Yeah.
is a mean thing to do
Yeah,
to
it is
DJs
cruel.
because like
It
you
is
don't
cruelty
know
to
where to
DJs.
bring the song in until that like, come on, guys.
Give us a break.
Give
Come
us a break.
on.
It's a long night. People have spilled drinks on the DJ stand, and then you give us a song where we can't find an easy one. Give us a break.
So we just heard all of these 16th notes and syncopated.
No.
What you're hearing, that was a hi-hat at the top. I'll play that again. And then there's this clavinet with kind of like a wah. And then there's a sequencer, synthesizer playing that single high note. which gives us the triplets, the 12/8 feel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But that clavinet's like making me wobbly.
It's a brain melt. I feel like my brain is melting.
One thing that helps link it together is there's this one little thing that only happens at the beginning. I even labeled it timekeeping help. Sounds like a snap or something. 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe that's the 2 and 4. That at least
do we know
links
it's
us
the
a
2
little
and 4?
bit. Yeah. Or is it the 2 and 4?
It might be the 1 and 3. We have no idea.
That clav is so crazy.
Let the drums come in. Let's see if we got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
the
that
snap,
helps.
for all DJs listening,
Yeah.
if you're ever mixing and searching,
Listen for the snap.
the snap is the 2 and the 4.
That's the anchor. That's going to
Yes.
give you, that's the 2 and 4. That's right.
Because otherwise, you're just going to be lost. The beat's going to drop in a weird place, and everybody's going to clear the dance floor.
Exactly right. So let's listen to the drums now. Now, this is a situation where no idea who's playing the drums. We have a few names, but no one's taking ownership. It's not in the album credits, first of all.
Wow.
There are 3 drummers who are talked about as being part of the change operation in Goody Music. Lino drums, maybe, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen any corroboration anywhere else. Terry Silverlight, I thought he was playing drums on this, but then his own website says he's playing drums on a lot of Change songs, but not
And
this
not
one.
this one?
And last but not least, a few interviews have mentioned a very famous drummer in Italy called Lele Malati, who has a huge list of credits. And I went through every single one to see if there was a misprint or something. Song does not show up there.
Do we think that maybe there's no drum credit because, like, Jock himself programmed the drums, and at that time we didn't think that like programming drums was the same as playing the drums?
I mean, to my ears, this really sounds like a live drummer.
Okay.
I don't think it's a drum machine. It doesn't sound like any of the drum machines
Just
that would
asking.
have been available.
No problem.
I don't know the reason. Maybe lost to time. Somebody had to dispute over, I don't know, payments over credits. I mean, the guy did get shot a few years later. It sounds like his business practices, according to all of the artists whose names I mentioned, they all sort of say, we stopped working with him when he stopped paying us appropriately. So it's unclear what happened, but a drummer played this beat. And I hear a kick drum overdub there because there was a flam. It has to be said, everything you're about to hear, this is 8 minutes of musical performance for every instrument.
Yeah.
As I listened through, I did not hear what appeared to be splices or somebody like made a mistake and then they went back and overdubbed it. Doesn't mean they're not there. I just didn't notice any. But all of these parts, what they have in common is that they're a little bit exhausting. There isn't an A section, B section in the song. There's no musically different thing happening in the
That's
verse
true.
and
Yeah.
different thing happening in the chorus. You have 8
It
minutes.
doesn't really change.
If you're a performer of an instrument on this song, your job is for 8 minutes to play one thing.
Yeah.
We do have, in addition to that, some claps, which sound like this. And those are clearly live. They're a little different on 2 from 4. And then you have a cowbell, which is doing this. And finally, you have timbales, which are part of when you hear fills and what sound like toms, they're often overdubbed timbales, isolated sounding like this. And here's the entire percussion mixed together. So that's what's happening in the drums
That's crazy.
with some mysterious performers who are uncredited,
We don't know.
unfortunately.
Not the timbales, but a lot of that drum, I think, is drum machine.
The thing is, when I listen to those hi-hats and it's 1979, 1980, there isn't a machine I'm aware of where you
But
could,
don't you think they probably looped it?
that would have been like a sampler, which I don't know that they had access to. I think they had a sequencer. They weren't without
Yeah,
toys
that-
and gear, but sort of like bringing together when this is.
Just because
yeah.
it's so repetitious, it
Yeah.
doesn't need change. To me, it just feels like we don't need a human being
Yeah.
to play that for 8 minutes. Do you think there's anything here that's sequenced?
That's a great question. So Davide Romane, part of the Brain Trust, who plays bass guitar, may or may not be playing this, which to me, I believe is a mini Moog, playing the bass line, one of two bass lines because it's doubled. When I listen to this, man, this sounds sequenced to me, but I'm not sure. Let's listen together.
Love it.
With like a filter sweep opening and closing. That's what changes the sound. Open, kind of closed, letting in some high end. But this is going on. There are no variations to that rhythm. It's perfect every time for
that's
8
fair.
minutes.
But you know what? I will
Yeah.
say that Moog makes, other than
Oh,
Luther,
God.
that Moog makes the song.
It does.
Like,
How is it so
'cause
good?
in the studio just now, we were like snapping our fingers to that. And like, that sounds like a hit. to
It
me.
sounds like a hit. It's doing that for the entirety of the 8 minutes, which would make my fingers cramp up and I wouldn't be able to do it perfectly. It may have been Davide Romani. It might have been Malavasi. It's unclear. And it might have been sequenced. My guess is that it's sequenced because it's so
Okay.
perfect sounding
Okay.
just in time. And that is doubled with bass guitar by Davide Romani. You can tell it's got more high end.
Yeah.
And those
And
little
it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not the Moog. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I feel like the Moog makes that sound.
Not only
it
that-
makes it sound like the 80s as opposed to just like
I think that's a
70s
great
song.
point. That brings us more into the
It
80s, the
does.
new decade that we're entering here. So when you put that together with the other bass line, the mini Moog, they're playing the same lines, but one of them is a human and one of them is, I think, a sequencer
right.
on a synth, and they sound like this together. And the human bass line version gives the combined sound a human imperfect touch, kind of
Yeah.
like the hi-hats did. That's where you hear it's a little bit,
It's a little bit, yeah.
A
It's not
variety.
Perfect.
yeah,
I love
it's so
that.
good.
But
And
I
you-
will say that Moog feels like 80s action film.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm going to the warehouse.
Yeah. And
The
something bad's
the
going to
gun
go
runners
down.
are there.
Yeah. Oh, it's not going
But
to
I'm a guy who plays by my own rules.
It's not going to be a happy scene. Yeah. Bad stuff's about to go down in the warehouse.
Totally.
There are some moments where you hear Romani overdubbing his bass with another bass, sounding like this. So he's popping and slapping a
Yeah.
little bit, giving it more human feel. Here's one more overdub, and then I'll add the Moog to it so you can hear how it all comes together. And I'll bring in some drums after that. Let's get those drums in there. So that's the rhythm section.
So good.
Rhythming, grooving, 8 minutes of groove going on in the song. Just like that, no
it feels
changes.
Like, you know, and before we did this episode, I hadn't thought of this, but it feels like Searching serves as a bridge between like the disco funk era
Yeah.
and the 80s. You know what I mean? Like
think
this
you're
doesn't
totally right.
sound like 1976.
This is sort of
I was actually surprised to find out
Post-disco
this
in
is
a way.
1980 because
Yeah.
it feels like a very early entry into the 80s catalog.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I totally agree with you. And I think you're right. So far, it's that Moog is making a difference. It just adds to the tone color of the song, something different from what we're used to in sort of Bee Gees or whatever era disco. That would have been a few years earlier. We've gone beyond that. And when we get to Luther, as we've been alluding to, when we get to the vocals, it's a completely new, that brings in the
Yes.
funk, the R&B,
Absolutely.
that genre completely transforms the material.
What's going on with the Rhodes? Because now that we've heard the Moog, I didn't know that there was a Rhodes on the song.
Right. So there's a Fender Rhodes, which is the first time we are getting some chord changes. So underneath that steady, I guess you'd call it a pedal or ostinato or something, the bass line is just one chord the whole time. The Fender does this. And I'll bring in
So
the bass
beautiful.
line for context.
Yeah. Bum, bum, bum.
That's right.
Just chording.
That's just chording, just comping, playing those chords the whole time.
Just complimenting.
Complementing, exactly right.
So complimenting Rhodes.
Complementing the Rhodes. There's another Rhodes part which actually triples the bass line, I'm just noticing. But I listen to that and I really can't tell if that's sequenced or live. Again, it's the same question with all these. Just because to do that for 8 minutes would hurt my hands. But listen, we have some masterful musicians here.
Yeah.
Their hands may not cramp playing these parts for 8 minutes.
But they also sent these stems to New York. So a part of me does think that, like, in the interest of time and clarity, it could have been sequenced only because, they're not in the studio playing along with Luther.
They clearly have a sequencer because that is where we are getting the sequenced rotary high note thing. You can, in 1979, using voltage control in the pre-MIDI era, you could lock that to another device. So it's very possible we're getting a lot of sequenced instruments in here. But all this to say that we have now heard the musical bed of keyboards, bass, and drums. And that leads us to, on guitar, Paolo Giannolio, who plays this very chic-y sounding part. And it mirroring those Rhodes chord changes. But it's another rhythmic thing. 16th notes. And let's bring that weird clav back. And let's bring the cowbell back. It's like 5
It's a groove.
different rhythms happening.
It's a total groove.
And locking in together and making a groove.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love that. And that guitar, like, it does a lot, but it's very low in the mix. Am I wrong?
It's, a lot of, so just to be clear, this happens most episodes anyway. The mix that we're doing in the room doesn't necessarily match the song.
Right.
It's some of the parts were buried, and I think the guitar is a little less loud on the record than it is in this mix that I'm putting together.
But you definitely feel it.
You definitely
know that
feel
it's
it.
there.
It's contributing to the rhythm. And there's another guitar, speaking of which, this is definitely a felt sound. I was surprised to hear that this wasn't a synth. I'll play it for you. This is a crunchy guitar, almost like a rock guitar. I mean, not almost. That is a rock guitar. And that's doubling the Fender Rhodes.
Bow, bow, bow.
Exactly. Yeah, that surprised me.
That explains the Luther font that he used on his debut album.
There it is. There's the Luther metal.
He was always there. There's some horns out here.
Yes,
There's a
we
brass
have.
section.
I think it's just one guy. I think it's Rudy Trevisi
Okay.
on sax, who makes some cool contributions.
Yes.
And let's hear them in the form of a solo about 2/3 of the way, in fact. Sorry for laughing. That was funny, though. That was funny. Why are we all laughing? Why are we laughing? It's funny.
I'm not laughing. I actually think the saxophone had just such a wonderful renaissance in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, there's just something about the saxophone. It just feels like you should be driving that. I always call it the cocaine dealer's Mercedes-Benz down Sunset. And you're on your way to like an Eddie Murphy premiere. Like, there's just something about saxophones in 80s music.
You're right, too, to bring up
specifically.
that it is a resurgence. Because when you hear it isolated, my first thought was like, yakety yak. Like,
If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
I think about the movie Streets of Fire.
sure.
Like there's
I mean,
something
Bruce
about,
Springsteen and,
there was just a thing where like white guys really wanted to like channel the
kind of to
blues.
jazz it up. They wanted to blues it up, jazz
They
it
wanted
up.
to blues and jazz it up. Adventures of Babysitting. Everybody had a saxophone.
Not just in
pop
America. Rudy Trevisi in Italy felt the same way.
They were like, hey.
Trevisi.
They're like, we need a saxophone.
Hey, we need Hey, I'm Rudy Trevisi.
And there's a horn section, is there?
There are some horn parts possibly played by Malavasi himself, who is a trumpet player, and possibly as well with Trevisi, but they are uncredited, so we are not sure. But we do know they sound like this. So these are lines that are written. These kind of remind me of those Fred Wesley, Maceo Parker,
The
bebop,
funky horns.
the bebop lines we were talking about in the Parliament episode. Yeah,
Totally.
Sort of.
What's going on with the strings section?
Well, the strings in true disco form are adding an awful lot of warmth. Let's listen to them. Wow, a lot of bleed. You hear the bands. These are obviously overdubbed. These are obviously overdubbed after the band had played. You can hear the music being piped in probably. But I'll add just warm chords mirroring the roads,
Laying a bed.
playing a bed. And it's rising to a crescendo.
Oh, that's nice.
Beautiful. And high note.
Hearing all these percussive components to the song, it reminds me of Axel Niehaus from
Yes.
our episode about the Roots.
That's right.
Where they
The
were
next
like,
movement.
what is in the bad boy records of the late 90s that makes you
Right.
want
What's
to
the
dance?
secret sauce that makes the girls move as
Yeah,
as he puts it?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's here too. It's like like it just like
I think
even
it's
sitting
16th
here,
notes. The
I'm
answer
just like,
is 16th notes. We
Yeah.
love 16, like syncopated
And it's
16th
syncopation.
notes and the
Yeah.
syncopation. That's right.
it's amazing. It really taps into something in our reptilian brain.
I think all the building, as we're going through it and we're listening to one thing, it is, I can't stop building, adding, and subtracting things.
I know there's
these
so
elements.
many there's so many things,
remixes to be
so many
made here.
layers of this.
Yeah.
But now we've come to the layer that I think everybody who's listening wants to hear. There's one thing that makes this song just tower above so many other songs in 19.
You want to hear the sax bleat again?
That's not the element that I
Okay.
was talking about. I was actually talking about an element known as Luther Vandross. We want to hear some vocals. We want to hear them isolated. We want to bathe in the purity and the sound of
The glow of
Luther's-
love, the warm glow
of-
of
Yes, the
warm
glow
glow
of
of Luther.
Luther's vocals. So I would say just give me the opening of the first verse.
Hit the town in the cold of the night. Looking around for the warmth of a light. There was fog on the road, so I guess no one saw me arriving.
Stop it.
Why'd you make me stop it, man?
Just because there's so much to even unpack there.
mhm.
I'm
Okay.
thinking about Morrissey's verse on "This Charming Man." Like,
Yeah.
there's something about like when a singer tells you a story.
Yeah. You're locked in.
You're like, I'm already like, wow, this is like
Once
an
upon a
incredible
time.
story.
What happened next? What happened next? Yeah.
Who wrote these lyrics?
So the song, it's a 50-50 split between our Mauro Malavasi, our main composer of this entity, of the production entity, Goody Music. And he worked with a British lyricist called Paul Adrian Slade, who
Did
is
Paul
credited.
work on anything else we might know?
He wrote, I mean, among other things, he wrote Grace Jones's I Need a Man. So this is a gentleman who writes good lyrics.
That's interesting because Morrissey is British and this guy's British.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, like there might have been something in the sauce, so to speak,
Yeah.
at that time where people were just like, we want to tell a story. Give us some more of the verse because like it's just he's painting a picture here.
Yeah, I want to know what happens next.
I was tired, been awake for some time. Then my lights hit a welcoming sign. It said, if you're alone, you can make this your home.
If you want to.
Oh.
I'm on board, man.
There's something about a vocalist who really understands that the job is to not just sell the lyrics or sell the story. It is those things, but just to make you believe that they are the lyricist, they are the storyteller, that this thing not only happened to them, but maybe is happening to them as they're singing it. And I'm there. I'm like in the fog with
You
the
can
lights.
make this your home if
Yeah.
you want to.
The searching, the loneliness.
He is
He's on the road, right? I mean, that's what I'm picturing, being on the
yes,
road,
absolutely.
traveling,
you can
touring.
see the fog. You can see his headlights hitting.
It's fog, so maybe he's touring with Bowie, like, I mean, it's so specific. And I'm obviously appending my own knowledge of his story because he didn't write the lyrics. This Slade guy did.
It's funny that I'm applying my own thing to the lyrics
Yeah.
because Luther is such a fascinating person with such a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And when I hear him sing, you're welcome. You can make this your home if you want to.
Yeah.
I'm applying that to his life story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's probably not even there, but because he sings with so emotion, it feels like it's there.
I mean, that's as valid as any explanation is. My interpretation is actually not just that it's him on the road, but more specifically, I'm bringing myself to this, and I'm knowing what it's like to be like in England as a DJ and like away from my family for a few weeks, and like you like meet people and like you kind of have moments. This is a true revelation, which is not a revelation. It's like sometimes you're away from home and you're just being a DJ and like about to leave the club, and you're like, someone starts talking to you and you're like, you can make this your home if you want to, is like, there's a flirtation and it's maybe being received, but maybe not what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought of. I just flashed to this, I'm going to go back to my hotel room and save my, marriage. And it's like, you can make this your home if you want to, is that flirtation. It's that moment. That happens. That's happened to all of us.
To me, the chorus is searching for so long.
Yeah.
But he does something in the second chorus, which I want to hear it isolated because it's so good to me. And anybody who knows the song knows it, is when he says, no news, no buy, no how, no why. Like, it's so good. If we can hear the second chorus, that'd be amazing.
Just came by here by chance, only wanted to dance. No news, no one. Taken back by surprise, what's in front of my eyes? This girl in a rose disguise. She said, stop, stop. Get out your heart.
It's so good.
That's
like,
my chorus.
why is this so good?
I don't know. It's making me upset too with how good it is.
It's so good.
Every time we hit play, we have to just listen.
No news, no bad. Like it's
too much.
Somehow he
it's
takes
perfection.
a track that's already good.
Yeah.
He just elevates it, and the lyrics are so good.
And that harmony stack that comes in then, I mean, to me, that's the chorus, but it doesn't matter. That's just another incredible melodic moment in the song, if you want to put it that way.
It's got the shuffle beat, which, as we've talked many times about Doing It to Death by Fred Wesley and James Brown, like, you don't really change that.
Yeah.
Like the beat is a groove.
Right.
But he's giving you verses and choruses and refrains.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's giving you so much on top of a song that's not musically changed that much. One reason I was so excited to do Searching is because I don't even think it's nostalgia. Sometimes I'm like, we're talking about a song and I'm definitely attaching a certain nostalgia to it. But this song to me, again, feels like I've jumped into a time machine and I'm in another place. I'm in a different New York, An
Italian New York. An Italian.
That's what's ironic is that it's made by Italians, but no, I'm almost forgetting about Jacques Petru and all these people. I'm like, for me, it's Luther, it's that shuffle beat, it's that Moog, and it just feels like the Wall Street Journal has been delivered at my doorstep, and the city smells like freshly baked bagels at 6 a.m. Like we're waking up to a new decade.
Yeah.
And that decade is the Ed Koch, New York.
So let's talk about another unsung hero. I suppose the unknown drummer is the unknown unsung hero. But Jocelyn Shaw Brown, a.k.a. Jocelyn Shaw, a.k.a. Alan, is on backing vocals on this song. And we're fans of her work with Cerrone and Salsoul Orchestra. She's on Gimme the Night background vocals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, along with Patty
We did an episode
Austin.
about that song.
That's right. But one of my favorite examples of her vocals is this. That's right. She is the sampled vocalist on Snap's 1989, The Power. That's originally from Love's Gonna Get You, Jocelyn Brown, 1985. Here's the source of that sample. That's Jocelyn Brown, a.k.a. Shaw. So here she is in the stop. I guess we'd call this the chorus, technically.
Stop.
The refrain, maybe.
She said, stop. Get out your heart.
You can hear it at the top there.
That's almost like a second chorus to the song.
Yeah.
It actually seems criminal now hearing the song that Luther is not a part of the splits.
I completely agree with you. Like as we go through it and listen piece by piece.
He makes the song. And what's sad is he probably got paid a check on the day.
Absolutely.
And yet another singer just doesn't make the song that it is.
No, absolutely. listen, we just sort of named a whole bunch of artists we liked everything we heard when we were going from stem to stem. Every kind of part made a real contribution. The fact that we don't know the name of the drummer is pretty lame. Luther's elevation of that incredible musical bed, which by itself is amazing, but Luther takes it to the next level. Thank goodness his name was on the credits, at least. On the record, unlike the drummer. But yes, I agree with you that he should have been cut into the publishing.
Well, I will say this. After the success of Change's album, The Glow of Love, Change actually wanted Luther to sign on full on as their lead singer.
Yeah.
And in that case, he probably would have gotten some splits, but Luther declined. He was like, I want to make my own music.
He had his vision.
Produce my own music. He had a vision.
He had a roadmap and he was on his way. And arguably, this song kind of sets the stage for that next part of his career.
I mean, here's the deal. He goes on to produce amazing music for the next, 3 decades. Look at the trophy cabinet. He's got 11 platinum albums, 40 million records sold worldwide. I mean, look at who benefited from Luther's genius. And trace it to now. You've got Roberta Flack. You've got Aretha Franklin. You've got Chic, Dionne Warwick, Mariah Carey, as we mentioned earlier, all the way up into the future, posthumously with Kendrick Lamar and SZA, all massively influential artists who took so much inspiration from Luther Vandross.
And what's incredible as we listen to the song Searchin' by Change from 1981 featuring Luther Vandross, what's really incredible is to hear it was all there on day one. Like as we listen to his isolated vocals in the stems, all of that was ready to pop out and go global and go like
you can't teach
planetary,
that. That's
right?
instinctual,
Yeah,
right?
it was already
those
there.
Those are instinctual
It was already
choices
there.
that he's
that
making.
Talent was already there.
Before we move on totally from legacy, I think we should say something about Change. Change never reached those levels that they reached during, I feel, their Luther Vandross.
Well, I mean, I think it's baked
era.
into an anonymous band that there's going to be a ceiling to how far you can go when the members aren't somebody people can gravitate towards. Once they had Luther and lost Luther, the music was still good. I mean, there are still incredible Change records that come out through the 80s.
Absolutely.
And they're still touring, I believe, to this day, even with
Is that true?
rotating cast.
I mean, I would go see them. Like, they have Lover's Holiday,
Yeah.
which is a great song. They've got The Glow of Love, which is an absolute
Totally.
classic. But Luxury, what do you think the legacy of Searchin' is?
I think one thing we've talked about today and is really clear from the story is it's unusual for in an anonymous band situation or in these sort of genre-based musical projects for the vocalist, especially an unnamed one without a face on the cover, to break out, to have the opportunity to go to the next level. So I think that's a really clear, there's some luck in this mix, in this story. Maybe there's some confidence that he gets from the David Bowies and Roberta Flacks of the world, helping him to be like, you know what? No, I deserve a little bit more. It's difficult to say why the confluence of events led him to be able to break out of the background singer box.
Yeah.
But he did in the best possible way
Absolutely.
a background singer can possibly do it.
And I think that's because his talent was just undeniable. I mean, there's so many wonderful stories where somebody got like that leg up or they got the platform. But I feel like in a weird way, this might be the story of somebody who was just kind of destined to make it. And he didn't know, his father died when he was 8. He didn't know when he told his mom, hey, Mom, I'm dropping out of college to become a singer. He didn't know that his father was a great singer.
Yeah.
He didn't know that he had this genetic legacy, I guess, if you want to call it that.
That song is so poignant too. What is it called?
Dance with My Father.
Dance with My Father is, his performance on that is just so devastating.
Can I admit, I can't listen to it. Literally can't listen to it without getting choked up.
Yeah.
Thinking about it kind of choked me up a little bit. So, it's just one of
feel
those
that.
songs because I lost my pops when that song came out. It's one of those songs I don't dare go near it.
Yeah.
Because
I hear
it's
that.
too honest and it's too vulnerable. And
This is why we love music. Here it is again. We're having a Roy Ayers. We're having another Roy Ayers moment
gotta be strong.
because
Gotta be
these
strong.
incredible musicians, they
Gotta
touch
record
us.
the podcast. But yeah, seriously, like,
Don't be too tough. Wait, hold on.
I'm too tough.
Don't be too tough.
Oh, man.
Don't be too tough.
I've never cried in my life.
He's a beautiful artist who brings out beautiful emotions.
No,
That's it.
seriously.
That is the name of the
That
game. That's
is-
the entirety of the goal of this, to connect with that emotion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Luther. Thank you for your talents and your songwriting and everything else. We could have spent a whole episode talking about your solo career, but we wanted to share this song because we just wanted to hear your instrument, your voice, isolated. Thank you. Thank you so much, bro.
And how wonderful is it that we're literally living in a moment where Luther's legacy is being
shared with
a new generation.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not just his voice, but also the title of the song feels kind of like Kendrick and SZA are helping teach a lesson to ensure that his legacy gets passed down
Absolutely.
to the next generation who are hearing him and maybe looking to discover where it came from. Maybe they're going back to his catalog, and hopefully they'll be listening to this song when they do that.
100%. Okay, Luxury, it's time for one more song. This is the segment where we share a deep cut or a hidden gem with you, the One Song Nation, and with each other. You go first.
All right, well, listen, that song, the bass line to that song sure reminds me of this one. This is Body Language by Queen. We love this song. Both songs can exist, and they go back to back really well in a DJ set.
We talked about this on a previous episode. I think that this song came out a couple of months after Searchin'.
Sure.
And I think Freddie was probably in New York and probably heard Searchin' on the radio.
Yeah, it came out about a year later. It's got the same 12/8, beat, and that bass line, and the fact that it's a Moog, and John Deacon usually plays bass guitar, but he's playing a Moog.
Very,
Listen,
very similar.
Very similar, but hey, two great and different songs.
Yeah.
And if you're a DJ, play them back to back, see what happens. What about you, Diallo? What's your one more song?
Today I have a song by Eva Shaw and Dylan Ponders. This is a song called Juice.
Everybody's there, I might move into a zoo. Sent me a pack and it's all getting chewed. Big dog, hit me out drunk in my videos. Talking anything at the part like it's mini golf. Yeah.
Eva Shaw and Dylan Ponders. This is just one of those songs where I feel like I love that people are, experimenting with mixing rap and dance music in a real way.
Yeah.
It's not cheesy. It doesn't feel pandery. It actually just feels like it's a groove.
It's a bop and it slaps.
My kids just cringe.
All kids just cringe.
All kids just cringe. As always, if you have a suggestion for one more song, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok and just message us. You can find me on Instagram at Diallo, Diallo, and on TikTok at Diallo Riddle.
And you can find me on Instagram at Luxury, LUXXURY, and on TikTok at LuxuryXX.
And you can also follow at One Song Podcast on Instagram and TikTok for exclusive content. You can also watch full episodes of One Song on YouTube and Spotify. Just search for One Song Podcast. We'd love it if you'd like and subscribe.
Also, be sure to check out the One Song Spotify playlist for all of the songs we discuss in our episodes. You can find the link in our episode description.
And if you made it this far, we think that means you like the podcast, so please don't forget to give us 5 stars and leave a review and share us with someone who you think might like this show. Your fellow music nerd. It really helps keep the show going. Luxury, help me end this thing.
I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And this is One Song. We will see you next time.
This episode was produced by Melissa Dueñas. Our video editor is Casey Simonson. Our associate producer is Jeremy Bimbo. Mixing by Michael Hardman and engineering by Eric Hicks. Production supervision by Razak Boykin. Additional production support from Z Taylor. The show is executive produced by Kevin Hart, Mike Stein, Brian Smiley, Eric Eddings, Eric Weil, and Leslie Guam.